How are you?
Good. I'm living the dream. How are you?
I am so good because today we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is sports and football. Sports tourism is definitely booming, and it's not a new thing. It feels like people have just started talking about it more and more recently that sports tourism is such a big trend, but it's honestly not new. Sports have always been huge parts of people's lives, and I know I've definitely traveled for sports games many times in the past. Have you ever participated in that sports tourism quote unquote trend?
I can't say that I have. I did not come from a big sports family. I'm just getting into it now, so hopefully I'll have some sports trips on the books soon.
Yeah, exciting. No, I mean, I went to Florida State, so huge college football fan. And I
Mhm.
remember even in college when we were all broke and like scraping together money, we would still try to get to our bowl games. Or I went, actually was lucky enough to be in school when Florida State won the national championship in 2013. And while I did not sadly get to go to the Rose Bowl in California, I know a lot of people who did, and it's always been a big thing. I mean, 2013 was over 10 years ago. So yeah, so today we're talking with some folks from Milwaukee and from Green Bay, Wisconsin, about how their destinations worked together to support one another during the NFL draft that was hosted in Green Bay this past year.
Let's get into it. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today on the layover. It is officially fall, so fall means two things, sports, and good weather. And with sports, it can really either bring people together or divide people. So we're really excited to introduce our guest today, who kind of showed us how DMOs can work together in the sports travel industry. So I will pass it over to you guys to introduce yourselves.
Great, thank you. Josh Albrecht, Chief Marketing Officer, Visit Milwaukee.
Hello, I'm Nick Meisner. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Discover Green Bay.
Awesome. So to kind of set the stage here, last year, or I guess this year technically, the NFL draft was hosted in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So you two and your DMOs really connected, along with a lot of other DMOs in the state as well, to build the bridge and encourage travel from just Green Bay to other areas of Wisconsin. So can you kind of give an overview of how that whole process worked? It can be really quick snippets just to kind of talk about, how did you decide to do that? How did you guys work together? And how can we encourage other DMOs to do similar in the upcoming years as the US is bringing in more and more sports, large sporting events?
Yeah, I mean, I think on our end here at Discover Green Bay, it was a simple realization that um, you know, this was a state of Wisconsin event. There's a lot of those that happen. I mean, every Packer game, people are staying all over Northeast Wisconsin, and Appleton and down to Milwaukee, and same with the Ryder Cup that was here in 2021, and EAA that happens every year in Oshkosh that brings in over 600,000 people. That these large events, the state really has to come together to make it a successful thing. And I think it's important to realize that the rising tide of a tourism in a state really can lift all the DMOs. So
Mhm.
when we were strategizing and building the website, it was really about meeting the visitor where they were at and how they were going to interact with our destination. Knowing the challenges here in Green Bay, that we were hosting an event that was going to have over 600,000 people attend, and our inventory of places to stay. Our destinations around us, like Milwaukee and Appleton and Oshkosh and up and down the east coast of Wisconsin, would need to be prepared. So it was better to realize that early and work together to make sure that every destination was prepared and had a space to promote their destination. Knowing that the volume of traffic to the website was going to come through Green Bay, we really looked at, okay, how can we spotlight our friends and these other places to stay and make it really easy. So that's why we created the Wisconsin destinations page on greenbay.com/draft25, where we were, we had a campaign around, helping people find a place to stay and interact with other Wisconsin destinations. And that's where Milwaukee came in with some great ideas how they were gonna activate outside of the draft hours.
Yeah, and I would say it was a great opportunity for the full state, as you said, and kudos to Nick and the Green Bay team. They owned that. They said this is not just Green Bay's event. This is the state's event. So I remember early on there was a fun PR opportunity where they carried the football across Lake Michigan on the Lake Express and docked in Milwaukee, and the Packers came down for it, and Discover Green Bay was there for it, and Travel Wisconsin was there for it, and we had I think the governor was even there, right, Nick? I think the governor came and got the handoff. And it was a fun little event at the pier there and here in Milwaukee, and then they all got onto bikes and rode bikes, little bicycle pedal bikes, not Harley Davidsons, the pedal bikes up out of the city, and so it was automatic, the whole state was encompassed and the whole state was buying in from the smallest shop owner to the governor. And so that was what was really cool. But it was a huge kudos to Discover Green Bay, because they, a lot of destinations might get territorial. They might say, this is our event. Why is Madison trying to get room nights? Why is Milwaukee trying to get room nights? But Discover Green Bay said, no, this is a statewide effort. It's going to take all of us to make it happen. And the standard phrase, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And so we jumped in on that opportunity like we do with Green Bay Packers games, and we knew the draft would be similar. Fans would be coming through Milwaukee, they'd be driving through, they'd be flying into Milwaukee and maybe driving up. Maybe fans were coming from Chicago or Indianapolis or somewhere to see their team, and so they'd be passing through, right? And so we had to make sure that we were ready when that happened as well, and making sure our partners locally were setting the stage for hospitality that they would receive in Green Bay. And that was a big thing for us. And so we made sure to partner really close with Discover Green Bay, follow their lead on providing information on our website. So we had Draft Day Central stuff on our website as well, like how you could get from point A to point B and have the experience. And we also knew a lot of locals in Milwaukee would be wanting to make the trip up. And so we had to make sure that they were getting information from us as well on local radio and TV and things like that. So Nick joined a few webinars along the way for us, talking to our partners directly, and came for a few press conferences and did a lot of press and media in Milwaukee. And I don't think it's probably hasn't gone any better in any other location, and there's no way Pittsburgh can do it better.
I don't think so, but we'll see. We'll see how they do.
Extending the challenge to them.
That's right.
They're listening. Better get on it.
They'll do a great job.
How did those conversations start? And had you guys had a structure like that before, where you guys have kind of all come together to work on that cross promotion in a way that this has been set up before?
Not really, I guess, in such a robust way. And I mean, it's the draft is, from a media perspective, from an attendance perspective, is just so big. But what I think it did is going back to the Ryder Cup, we all kind of pitched in, and that was held right in between Green Bay and Milwaukee, so that was something that we worked together on from a destination standpoint, but not as, I would say, structured, I guess, as this was. And I think it really showed us how we can come together for these large events, and even for smaller events too, whether that's the big weekend that's coming up for the Brewers right now, and that just so happens to occur with the Packers bye week. So what an amazing opportunity for Milwaukee and fans from Green Bay to head down to Milwaukee, and vice versa when there's big Packers games, or training camp or anything like that we can partner. And honestly, if you look at the geography of Wisconsin, Green Bay is situated in a way where if you're coming to Green Bay, you're going to have to drive through one of our major destinations, whether it be Milwaukee, Madison, La Crosse, Eau Claire, Wausau. We're situated on the very eastern most portion of the state. And whether you're coming from the west, south, or north, you're going to have to drive through a good portion of the state. So it's, why wouldn't we want to capture those visitors that are coming through for these large events and expose them to the tourism market in Wisconsin as a whole, and encourage those return visits.
Yeah, I would sort of echo that, in that it was a great effort in regionalism for tourism, and understanding how the tourist experience doesn't begin once they arrive at their destination. It begins when they leave their front door, right? And how we can impact their travel throughout the entire region, I think has us thinking through these other situations differently, as Nick said, right? Like we have to make sure that we're providing information for every home Packers game, or in the future, maybe we luck out and Taylor Swift comes and plays Lambeau Field, right? If that happens,
fingers crossed.
Yeah, if that happens, how
hey, life of the showgirl.
That's right.
Right? It's
All right.
today. Let's
It's
go.
release day. Yeah.
It happens. It's new, and who knows? Maybe she does a tour of NFL stadiums, and this time Lambeau hosts, right? Or a very high-profile Coldplay concert was in Madison, right?
Yeah.
How do you capture the traveler who's traveling between those stadiums, between these cities? They have to eat lunch, they have to eat dinner, they have to find a hotel maybe along the interstate as they get there, because maybe they're driving from so far away they need to stop before they even get to the destination. There's these hospitality moments that we need to capture and be advantage of, and to think regionally about that, I think changes some of how destinations have approached it in the past, where it was, we don't worry about the traveler until they're coming to us and at our home base, but really understanding that the travel experience is all around us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Josh makes a really good point there. And just getting to an event is such a important piece of the overall journey that somebody has. Like, somebody could have been driving up for the draft, and the draft could have been absolutely amazing, but if they had a bad time at a bad hospitality at a stop in Sheboygan on the way, they're going to remember that as well, and they're going to tie that into their entire visit to Wisconsin. And have that perception, like, oh yeah, the draft was great, but that was the NFL, the rest of the way kind of stunk. Like, that's not what we wanted to see at all. So that's, and the destinations across the state did a great job. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere in Wisconsin without having some sort of like welcome draft attendees, whether it was a small sign on a door or an entire event like Josh's team put on down in Milwaukee. Like, you don't get that everywhere. That doesn't happen just by accident.
That's such a great point, is that it's like you can influence what happens in your destination, but if you're not working with, especially just those in your other state or region, then that could totally disrupt, especially as we're thinking about things like World Cup, where we're getting a lot of international visitation, and for some of those visitors, they might not think about just Milwaukee as the state. Wisconsin as a state. They might think of that as their whole experience of the US. And so they could maybe have a layover in New York before they get to wherever they're going for the game. And that experience there might totally just mark their perception of the whole country, which could impact their spending. It can impact if they're going to come back. It's going to impact what they go home and tell their friends. So that is a really great point, that working together, especially when the country is in a really unique spotlight right now in general, especially from an international market, that is really important to kind of PR ourselves a lot better across the board.
And we're all in marketing. We know that a bad experience, people are going to write about 10 times more than a positive one. We've all seen it, right? That's how social media works, unfortunately, is there's more complaining than there is positivity sometimes. And that, if that's what's going to drive someone to, like Josh was saying, tell their friends and family, like, if they have that bad experience, they're going to share it, and that's not what we need.
I love that too, because I think this is the bottom line of why we all got into what we do today, was that hospitality and travel impact factor. I think a lot of the conversations we're having today are, around the shifting landscapes and around what's going to happen and around like these data points that we, are so important, but sometimes we forget that the traveler experience and what they go back and tell their friends and what they go back and tell other potential travelers is really, why we got into what we do, and some of what matters more than, these other, points we're looking at and measuring on a daily basis. So I love what you guys said about that as well. Can we talk a little bit about what that impact looked like for both of you guys and your teams from this campaign?
Sure, I can start. I mean, overall, the draft was a huge impact on Green Bay and Brown County, really shattering expectations. We did see a lot more spending and staying locally than we had thought. The initial projection was $20 million of total economic impact here in Green Bay, and we actually surpassed that total economic impact in just direct spending. There was over 46 million in direct spending during the days of the draft, and then when you factor in indirect and induced, the total economic impact was about between 73 74 million. From a statewide perspective, the study showed it was 104 million. Our initial projection for the state was 94. So, a lot more of that spending happened in Green Bay, just by the numbers than we had anticipated. But still, people were stopping all along the state. From a room nights perspective, what we saw was just incredible. We actually set a record for average daily rate on the Thursday of the draft, and we're over 90% occupancy. And the big part is you don't want to compare that like to a Packer game, right? Because the numbers are going to be similar because our inventory is only so high. If you compare that to what that weekend was in April the previous years, that's where it's like, wow, holy man. I mean, occupancy was up over 50% that week. So I will say though that hosting a large event is not all daisies and roses, especially when the event is happening in your market. We did see a natural slowdown in April. The NFL moved in on March 28th. And our convention center, or our expo hall and our arena were inside of the footprint. So those were shut down for the month. And people were like scared to come to Green Bay for a period of time because of the constructing of the draft site. I mean, it took over the entire Lambeau Field parking lot. There was business impacts, there was road closures, there was impacts to our residents and getting to their grocery stores. I'll never forget one phone call. A guy from a local healthcare agency called me and said, "Hey, have you guys thought about how we're going to get prescriptions to the families who we deliver their prescriptions near the draft footprint?" And I was like, you know what? That has not let us get on that right now. So you can make sure. So, that week more than made up for it. And it put, our region and our state on the map. We set records in viewership. It was the most watched Saturday of the NFL draft ever. 13 million people in total across the globe watched the event. So that spotlight was amazing as well. And we got a ton of local businesses involved. There was some Milwaukee artists involved. There was some businesses from across the state that were involved in pulling the draft off. So overall, it was really positive. But there is some of the, there's always the other side of the coin. But yeah, so I'll let Josh take the Milwaukee side. But that was overall what we saw.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest number for us Nick shared all of the great EIC numbers, the of economic impact, but very specifically for the one that I'll share is our occupancy numbers and how we saw that unfold. So at the last week of January, our occupancy for the Friday and Saturday of the draft, Thursday as well, were all under 10%. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we were under 10% occupancy in pre-booked rooms. And when we watched that, so we held our local press conference about what we were doing to promote the draft that last week in January. By the time the draft came, our goal was to get to 80% for Friday and Saturday night. We got to 79.5%. I'm rounding up. I'm saying we hit our goal.
That up. Yeah, round that up, Josh. Round that up. Let's go.
So I'm saying we hit our goal. So to go from we were roughly at 8% for Friday and Saturday night when we did our press conference to say, here's what we're doing, here's how you need to explore the draft. And then to finish at 80% was a huge win for us. That's a big swing and can be attributed almost directly to only the draft. We did end up hosting a small women's basketball youth tournament in our city that same weekend. But that alone doesn't get us to 80%. It was the draft. We know it was the draft. It's the thing that was happening. And so we know there was a huge impact, particularly on our outlying hotels. So a lot of our suburban hotels. So that tells me exactly what we predicted, which was there's gonna be a lot of people driving through and staying the night and then go or coming back, right? They stayed there late, Thursday night, stayed there late Friday night, and now they're heading back home and maybe they're a little too tired to go all the way back to Iowa. So they stopped in Milwaukee or something, right? So we saw that impact. That was huge. And then my other point that I would say, the anecdotal point is for any big event, those listening who are going to be hosting World Cup, or maybe they're doing an America 250 event or something in this coming year, or whenever you're hosting a big event in the future, what I think we both learned, Nick and I both learned probably is what Nick was sort of alluding to is there's going to be a business that doesn't see the impact.
Yeah.
You really have no idea which business that's going to be and for what reason. Maybe they're just outside the footprint, maybe they're just inside the footprint. Because when we hosted the Republican National Convention, we had footprint issues as well because of the security parameters. And so some businesses were in the security zone, some were out of the security zone. How you fit in those zones, you don't always know. And sometimes these big corporations or the federal government changes things last minute. And so trying to set the expectation of where and how the traveler will travel through your city, you can't predict it. And so that will impact. So trying to set the stage early of expectation of, hey, we know there's going to be this giant EIC number. The people are going to spend the money. But what we don't know is which place they're going to spend it. So it's on you as a business owner to take advantage of every opportunity and really try to help decide for yourself from the information you've been given to have success. And so that's really the toughest point about hosting any big event. Even when you're the city that's, an hour and a half, 2 hours away by car, like we were with Green Bay, we still went to all of our bids and NIDs, our neighborhood associations and business associations, said, hey, here's what's going to happen. We have no idea if someone might come through your area, but you can run Facebook ads, geo-targeted. You can put up posters. You can do all the things to try to help. Well, this is what we're doing. How you play off of what we're doing and what Green Bay's doing is up to you.
So did you kind of put that information together for your partners and send them out, or did you host like maybe a little webinar? How did you communicate with your partners?
And so we put together a business resource guide and distributed it to all of our partner DMOs across the state. Like Josh said, bids and NIDs as well, to distribute to their businesses. It was, I think, like 20 some pages of here's what's going on. And really the biggest thing with a brand like the NFL is here's what you can do and you can't do. You can't take the shield and modify it, right? You can't say these specific words in this order because they're trademarked, that sort of thing. Along with some tips and tricks, like Josh was saying, some tips on how to do Facebook campaigns, how to do Instagram campaigns, what a typical draft traveler looks like, what kind of demographic are we dealing with? It's a lot different than a game day. It's much more family oriented. It's a free event. So, providing those things that say like, all right, this is how we are suggesting you can prepare. And then we took that on the road. So we hopped in a bus with the Packers, with PMI, who runs our expo center, with Travel Wisconsin, and we made stops here in Green Bay, over in Eau Claire, then down to Madison, over to Milwaukee, where Visit Milwaukee so graciously hosted us with Associated Bank, and then up to Appleton. And we distributed these business resource guides and held a press conference as well as a webinar, or not a webinar, like an educational session for chambers, bids, NIDs, whoever wanted to attend to business associations, et cetera, whoever wanted to attend to learn about how to prepare for this event. So that's how we approached it, both in Green Bay and from a statewide perspective. One of the things we did with the business resource guide is provided like 2 blank pages where the destination could fill in their local information, about what they were doing. And I know Milwaukee did some of that, as well as some of their own guides and helpful tips and tricks when it came to their businesses as well.
Yeah, definitely. We hosted several webinars, and I mentioned earlier, Nick was gracious enough to jump on those webinars for our local partners to help share the news. And we did a bids and nids tour as well. So our business improvement district and neighborhood improvement districts, we went out to their districts, had coffee chats, tried to give them all the information that Nick and Discover Green Bay was providing with the NFL. We gave them the draft toolkits. How many people printed those out? I'm not sure, but we provided them. That's what I was saying before. We led them to the water. It was up to the business owner to go with it from there, right? And so it was definitely a lot of information, a lot of blogs and information building, press releases, and sharing of information. And we know that everything we did, there was still somebody standing in Green Bay going, "Hey, what's going on this weekend?" So it's hard. You gotta tell people 1,000 times, and sometimes they still forget.
Yeah, that was gonna
exactly.
Be one of my next questions was, how about with your community residents? How did you communicate? We're gonna have an influx in visitation. It's gonna be a little busier. Traffic might be a little different, and plus, like what you were already saying, Nick, about the construction and things and how that was disrupting some of the normal day-to-day. So how did you communicate with the residents to help them better prepare?
I've never been to more neighborhood associations in my life than I had been from we'll say January to April. So a few different things. We did have a resident section on greenbay.com/draft25, which is where we posted all the information. And the Packers and the NFL and Discover Green Bay, we all kind of partnered together to, our website is built for that sort of thing. That's visitor information, resident information, and the Packers and the NFL were very much aware that, like, hey, our platforms aren't great for this. We're really good about sharing the scores of the game and the draft picks and what's going on at Lambeau Field and news about the teams and that sort of thing. So let's try to drive all the traffic with these questions to the place that's going to best answer them, and that's going to be greenbay.com. And so the resident section had everything from the road closure schedule to detours, construction site timelines. We even had guides to how to become an Uber driver and how to rent your home legally so you didn't put yourself at risk of lawsuits. And then the NFL was also amazing. Like that big of a brand, when they were in town on site visits, we would host town halls and invite residents, and the people who in the NFL organization who were planning the event, literally the top people would be sitting at these neighborhood association meetings, answering concerns about road closures, sharing examples from other cities. So, like Josh said, you say it 1,000 times. Of course, there were some residents that, the week came and they're like, why is this road closed? Right. But we did the best we could from a communications perspective, both in person, online, and in the news media to get that information out. And, it was a little different for us probably than what resident sentiment was like down in Milwaukee. But I'm sure you guys had similar type interactions.
I think that's, a conversation that's happening a ton now with the World Cup coming up as well, is, how do cities and tourism boards work together to not only create a great experience for, our guests and tourists, but also our, residents who live here as well. And then taking that a little bit larger, how do you work with your neighbors to make sure that message is spread for wherever, these events touch. So.
Yeah. The resident component is definitely huge, and that's why we wanted to do some special events, particularly when it came to the draft. We hosted a luncheon event with a couple of former NFL players, and then we hosted a wonderful live performance of Inside the Huddle, which is the Green Bay Packers game day show. So we did a live broadcast of that from downtown Milwaukee. We actually partnered with our friend Bobby Portis Jr. from the Milwaukee Bucks, not football related, but sports related. Bobby helped offset some cost for local families to be able to attend that event as well. So we worked with Bobby Portis's foundation. We worked with Inside the Huddle and Team Lammy to do the showcase. And then we brought in some Packers legends. That was really designed for residents. We didn't think we would, there was no way that it was really going to steal any of the thunder from fans going to the draft. But we wanted residents to find a way to be a part of it. Maybe there was residents who couldn't afford to make the trip up to Green Bay. Maybe timing wasn't right for Green Bay. Maybe they couldn't get up for whatever reason to the city. And so this was a way they could still be a part of a historic event in our city. And by bringing the legends and the experience to our city, and let them be a part of that. And it was a great way for us to add to the excitement. And we really wanted to do it because it was the second time the draft was hosted in Wisconsin. The first time was 1929 when it was held in Milwaukee at the Hilton Hotel downtown. So we wanted to harken back to the original draft, but way back in the day, and sort of give a nod to history as well.
I do want to look at this from a little bit of a broader scope. So if you guys were to take the structure that you set up this time and do it all over again, what piece of advice would you give yourself, or maybe what would you optimize or tweak if you were to do this again? Something maybe people can take away with big events coming to their destinations.
Nick, you've probably got a giant list of things you would do different.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd change anything from a perspective of like how we worked with the other destinations, except for trying to drive more traffic there and drive more, awareness around it. I mean, I think we got ahead of it pretty well. Just from an event perspective, I don't know if honestly, it went amazing. It was absolutely incredible. The NFL was blown away with Green Bay as a host, and really the state of Wisconsin overall. We had very few traffic issues. Highway speeds did not go below 65. There was only 2 arrests that were made. There was no traffic accidents. Everything went really, really well. And I think anybody who's part of a large event would say this, but just, extending those timelines. We were doing traffic planning up until the Monday before. The DOT didn't technically stamp our traffic plan until the Wednesday before. Getting a better understanding, just having a better understanding of the construction timeline and getting that over to our residents would have helped a lot of communication. But when I think about it, those are all fairly minor things that I think I'm sure Josh would have the same if asked about, RNC or All-Star Game. Those are some things that all big events, I think, will suffer from, and I think people who are hosting them have to be aware of. Maybe more bathrooms. I don't know.
That's always a good one. Yeah, I think that's always a plus. Yeah, I would say, like, from my perspective, being on the outside of the whole planning process a little, but knowing how things went with the Republican National Convention and other big events, I think we do a really good job of being pre-planners in the tourism world, because we're like, when we're trying to book a meeting or a convention or a sports tournament, sometimes we're booking out 10 years in advance, like for some of these shows, right? So we're such future thinkers. We're such future thinkers. But the event planners themselves, once they book the date, they stop thinking about it. And that's the moment our constituents start thinking about it, and they want the answers immediately, and they want them all right then. But the NFL doesn't want to talk about it, right? We learned this the hard way, Nick. They didn't want to say a word until like after the Super Bowl, and even then they were like, "Get to me after the combine." Like, we'll get answers for you 3 weeks out, right? So, and they operate that way all the time, so it's no big deal for them, and they know exactly what they need to do, their cadence, their structure, because they do it every year. But it's always the host destination's first time. And so really understanding the timeline, like when am I going to know the actual detail, if I ever will know the actual detail, to tell others who expect me to have all the information from day 1 to day 100 to day 10 to day 0, right? Like they want all the, so expectation setting, just always like trying to do a better job of setting expectations, setting timelines to those who we're communicating to, when we're not in control of the timeline or the final detail. That's a tough world that CVBs live in for any event we host, whether it's the International Kiwanis Annual Convention or a small soccer tournament. We're not in control of the final logistics, and it's that same struggle we feel when we've encouraged a traveler to come to our city. I can't make the final sale for the hotel or for the attraction or the restaurant. And that's always been a tough spot for our DMO world. We don't handle the final transaction, but we're expected to know all the information. And so managing that is always top of mind. Like, how can I do that in a better way, in a better time? So I would encourage Pittsburgh and all future places to do what Nick did and what we did. Try to get as much information you can out of your DMO partners. Find out who hosted that big event the last time. Talk to them. They're going to have a unique situation different from yours for a variety of reasons, but there might be one or two quick little nuggets that save your life in the process. And so just talk to your DMO partners when it's a recurring event, and that will help you a ton.
Yeah, especially with something like the draft, and a lot of events are like this, where like we know that it's not that now that we've hosted it, it's not going to be coming back. Like we're not fighting for it again, right. Next year or the year after. So our biggest thing is like, we want the NFL to have a good experience moving this around to different NFL cities, so they keep doing it. So it does have a chance to come back. So, we've already been sharing information with Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. and hopping on webinars with them because ultimately a successful event in Pittsburgh is going to mean, all right, we want to move it to the next city and the next city and the next city. And eventually it'll come back around to Green Bay.
Too, just to think about, a lot of the partners that you've mentioned so far were kind of pretty close driving range, right? Like hour, 2 hour max. But a client that I work with very heavily here is Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is about 4 to 5 hours from Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken. So they weren't really trying to hop on so closely on the bandwagon to get overnight stays because they know that was way too far for someone to drive just to spend the night. But as you mentioned, people would be driving from Chicago or from other places, and they would probably pass by or see them. And Lake Geneva, Wisconsin just so happens to have a celebrity sponsorship with former Packers player Donald Driver. So all we did was just with a low budget amount, we didn't spend that much. I'm not going to share specific details or anything since that is their information. But I just wanted to mention, we just ran some ads in Green Bay during that weekend and had huge success, had a ton of positive feedback on all of the Donald Driver ads and videos and stuff. And so even if like you didn't get much out of it in that moment, they had that brand awareness because Lake Geneva is a smaller destination for people who aren't from the Midwest, maybe that were in Green Bay, getting that exposure, maybe planning a next trip later on where they would maybe hit some other destinations in the state too. So just to say that, as a destination that's 4, 5, 6 hours away from someone hosting the World Cup or from Pittsburgh hosting NFL draft in the next year, you can still capitalize on that amount of traffic that's going to be in those markets, even if you're not like a quote unquote drivable distance or gonna have that immediate impact. Thinking of what could be in the future, just getting your name out there is really important too.
Yeah, we saw a ton of that actually, and I want to commend our destinations in Wisconsin that were like a little further away. Milwaukee and Green Bay have a great connection. Highway 43, super easy. We see it all the time. But the Eau Claire and La Crosse and Madison even is a bit further than Milwaukee. Having that realistic approach, and I think that was critical because as Josh was saying, expectation setting is so critically important. And if those destinations would have went to their partners and said, hey, we're going to do this and it's going to drive room nights and business for you, when it's just not feasible with that destination. I think a lot of them did a great. They told me, I want to put our name on our website where we know people aren't going to come, but we want to see Destination Madison or Visit Eau Claire on the surrounding destinations page because we know people are looking at it. And of course, from a marketing standpoint, leveraging that, people are coming to Wisconsin and they're experiencing Wisconsin, even geofencing the event and running return ad campaigns. That's something that we're doing right now. And I'm sure other destinations across Wisconsin did the same. It's not, a secret sauce or anything like that. But looking at ways to take advantage outside of what is, I want room nights right now because this event is 4 hours away. Being realistic is really important, because when you're realistic about, hey, we're not going to get room nights, you can start to think about how can we leverage this for the future.
Well, I do have a fun little game for us to play if we want to hop into that. Perfect. So we, in the spirit of the draft, are going to do a draft of your favorite travel essentials. So we'll just, it's not going to be anything fancy, but we'll just go in a little order and each pick 2 or 3 of our favorite draft essentials, our travel essentials, one at a time. And then we're going to try to see if we can get this up to let people vote on who has the best travel essentials. So Nick, I will start with you. What's your first item?
Headphones.
Perfect. Okay, good one. Josh, what about you?
That's such a, okay, so wait, I have to have a qualifier. Is this a road trip or a plane trip?
I was thinking plane trip. That's why I went headphones.
I would say either. I mean, they both count as travel. So I would say just pick your preferred travel method.
Okay. Well, either way, I need some sort of go-to snack. And mine is like usually some sort of like trail mix for the car or for my ride. So there's some type of snacky food, salty snacky food. But if it's a road trip in Wisconsin, Nick, you know this, you gotta stop for squeaky cheese curds.
100%.
Kaylee, what are you picking?
All right. Well, don't tell me if this is allowed because it's kind of similar to Josh's, but I always have to travel with peanut butter M&Ms specifically. And even if I don't eat them on the trip, I just always have them in my bag, road trip or airplane, just in case.
I was gonna go headphones, but I am going to go now with my second draft pick, which is my Kindle. I'm a reader. I have to have my Kindle. Okay, Josh, we'll start with you this time. We've got you locked in for trail mix / squeaky cheese curds. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Nailed it. That was a good pick.
Perfect.
That was a good pick.
So my second round pick. All right, second round pick would be I love a good hoodie. So I need my sweatshirt, a hoodie sweatshirt, especially for travel, because you never know if it's going to get cold, but on, off, it's great. Super, super comfy. And I've been a gray hoodie sweatshirt person since I was like 16.
Great pick. And I feel like the airplanes are a little cold these days, so you gotta have your sweatshirt. Okay, good pick. Nick, we'll go to you.
A lot of the travel I do is for work, so sometimes I don't always wear the most comfortable shoes, for those trips. So having a comfy pair of either tennis shoes or sneakers or whatever that you can change into, whether it be for the airport or for your drive home. I hate those like uncomfortable dress shoes, and the sooner I can get out of them, the better.
Okay, I'm locking you in for sneakers. Kaylee, what are you going for?
Second round, TSA pre-check. I don't want to have to take my shoes off or take my laptop out of my bag. Even though now I feel like pre-check lines are always longer than standard lines, but I will wait to not take my shoes off.
I'm going to out myself. I travel so much for work and leisure. Like I'm on a plane at least once a month. I don't have pre-check because I got into the attitude of if everyone has pre-check, does anyone have pre-check? And then I died on that hill, so now I have to stick with it. So
I'm on that same hill. I'm on the same hill.
I didn't have it for the longest time, and I got it, and I because we had a big travel year with the draft and stuff. I could never go back. I could never go back. We're 50-50 on this show right now.
I know. It's crazy. I feel like normally pre-check is like everybody's on it. Or like now people are trying to get me into clear, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't want them scanning my eyeball or whatever they do. I don't know if that's what they do, but it's weird.
I'm gonna lock in my second pick as gum. Great for the airplanes, great for making friends. Offer a little piece of gum. Networking. Kaylee, we'll start with you.
I mostly travel by plane, so we're gonna keep the plane momentum. An aisle seat. I don't want to have to. I would hate when people fall asleep and I have to make them move so I can get up. Always try to get the aisle seat.
That's a good pick. Nick, I'm gonna go with you.
I think my picks are outing me as what I really care about here, and I'm gonna go with a wireless charger. It saved my life so many times when you're, struggling to, find that outlet at the airport, or you have to, be charging on the go. I've got this like one that's a magnet that sticks to the back of my phone that actually my daughter asked for Christmas, and I was like, this is sick. I'm buying two. So yeah, definitely a portable charger.
That's a smart one.
It is. I'm notorious for not charging my phone, so that would I should invest in one.
Josh, I'm gonna go pass it over to you for your final pick.
Yeah, when I travel, I loved actually to go wireless as well, but I also try to go no electronic a lot of times, especially on a road trip. So a solid book or a couple of magazines, some like old school printed material.
And then I'm gonna go kind of similar, but also opposite. I'm gonna go with a good podcast. I need a good podcast to listen to.
I have an honorable mention.
Okay, let's hear it.
My Owala water bottle, because it doesn't spill in your bag. I have a ton of Stanleys and I do love them, but they spill. The Owala is the best. Highly recommend if you don't have.
I've ruined a laptop with not having a regular water bottle.
Oh no.
Yeah. Literally, I pulled my laptop out of the bag and there was so much water, it started coming out of the charging port. And the woman in the aisle seat next to me on the plane just looked at me like she just saw a ghost. I was like, yeah, this is bad. Bad day.
Oh no.
Well, I know we talked a little bit about some must-have foods, but we do have one little thing to wrap us up today. I will let Kaylee introduce us to our last little segment.
Yeah, so we are doing this on every episode that we're hosting with all of our guests to put together a little potluck party of all the different foods from all of your different destinations. So if you were invited to our destination potluck, which you are because you're a guest on our podcast, what dish are you bringing that you would say encapsulates your destination?
Nice. The one dish that best encapsulates our destination. I would come with plenty of Miller High Life for everyone to drink.
Perfect. I love that answer.
We might get through 2 Wisconsin destinations without cheese curds, but can we just like make the pick for the state and say we're bringing cheese curds and I can pick something else?
Yeah,
sure.
I think
so.
The
Wisconsin is bringing the cheese. We are bringing the cheese, hands down. But from Green Bay specifically, this is a really like hyper local thing that we're known for. It's called Booyah. Have you heard of Booyah?
Mm-mm.
So Booyah is it's an old Belgian recipe. In fact, we brought it down to the Super Bowl when we were promoting the draft, and some folks in New Orleans said it reminded them of like Midwest gumbo. It cooks for 18 hours in a big 50-gallon kettle. It's a really hearty chicken soup. In fact, they serve it at Lambeau Field, and the recipe they use is a 118-year-old recipe called Grandpa Joe's Booyah. So we'd bring the Booyah.
Okay. I do also think Wisconsin is very well known for fish fries as well. Am I mistaken?
Yes.
You guys have a lot of options.
Look, Kaylee, we got so many options. Fish fry. We didn't even talk about bratwurst.
We didn't.
We are strong with the sausages.
Yeah.
Cream puff, go dessert. I can get you
cream
puffs that you can imagine. So we'll get to craft cocktails, Wisconsin old fashioned, the different type of old fashioned that you typically would drink.
Yeah.
And we're all gonna roll up to the potluck on Harleys.
That's right.
Awesome.
Love it.
I definitely remember the old fashions from Summit. They were so delicious and everywhere, and that is what stood out to me the most from Milwaukee. Was just I had never had one before, so I had to, stick true to the it was delicious.
We also do a big pretzel like you wouldn't believe. You think you've eaten a big pretzel, and then you see our big pretzels, and you're like, oh, that's really what a big pretzel is about.
Well, thank you guys so much. This was such a good episode, and I'm excited for everyone to listen and hopefully take away a little bit about working with your neighbor. thank you guys so much for listening, and a big thank you to our guests, Josh and Nick. This was such a fun episode. I learned a lot about sports and a lot about working with your neighbors. I hope that you guys have some good takeaways from today's episode. I know that there is a lot on the horizon with big events coming to a lot of our cities. Kaylee, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I am very excited for what's coming up for all of our destinations in the next 3 years, with World Cup, with Olympics, with, who's hosting Super Bowl in the next few years, the NFL draft. There's all these big events that are constantly coming up that not just the host cities, but many other surrounding destinations can take advantage of. And I think a lot of the message that Josh and Nick shared to collaborate, and it's not a competition, we're all trying to achieve the same goals, was really helpful. And I also loved their insights on how they talk with their partners and their residents about these things too, because it is easy to lose sight of some of those other things when we're just focusing on bringing in new people rather than the existing residents and supporting our partners.
I agree. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to connect with us via social, email, subscribe to the Layover Live, and we'll be back soon with a really exciting episode. Bye.